I don't think Taylor was supposed to spray the Opalite spray on herself. I think she misused it, and that's why she ends up getting teleported to the Lonely Man's world. When she arrives in the Lonely Man's world after he sprays the cactus and she sprays herself, she's covered in goo and she says, "What the?" Because I don't think that's how the Opalite spray was intended to work. It seems that inanimate objects have some sort of significance in this world of the Opalite music video, because although I've seen a lot of people talking about this theater shot with the sign on the left that says patient for encore, I haven't seen anybody mentioning the sign on the right that is specifically at barring inanimate objects from entering the theater. Very specifically, a cactus and a trash can, which are the two inanimate objects we see Opalite sprayed on. Taylor is the only person we see the Opalite spray sprayed on. We do see a person sprayed with the nopolyte spray, but we see them transform back into an object, and the stapler isn't covered in goo. So this now gives us two examples of a transformation with the Opalite or nopolyte spray other than Taylor's. The first example of the transformation we actually get from the ad when we see her transform the trash can into a person, and the person is not covered in goo. Granted, it's an ad, so they probably wouldn't include that, but it's worth keeping in mind. And the second example being with the Nopolite spray when he sprays a person and they turn back into a stapler. But both of these examples lead me to believe that the inanimate objects are not being swapped with another person from somewhere else and are instead actually just transforming themselves. So the outside of the object changes to a more appealing form like a person, but the inside of the object stays the same. This would also explain why Nopolite is the number 2 bestseller, because the Opalite doesn't actually fundamentally change the object that you spray it on, it just changes the surface. So most of the time, people end up wanting to revert the object back to the way it was. And we can see at the end that the other objects did not actually change. Garbage is still garbage, and the stapler is going to therapy to work on its issues. So again, the opalite did not change the objects themselves, it just changed the surface of them, which is why the owners went and eventually used the nopolite on them. Now, when Taylor sprays the opalite on herself, she's actually misusing it because you're supposed to spray it on an inanimate object that is your problem. But she sees herself as the problem. She said this in Antihero, and in this music video, she makes it clear because The Rock is her best friend. The problem is not The Rock itself, it's with the way the world perceives her relationship with The Rock and that she's turning away other friendships in favor of The Rock. So when she gets the opalite, she makes the assumption if you're supposed to spray it on your problems, I'm the problem, I'll spray it on me. Whereas with the cactus, it's very easy for the lonely man to see that the cactus is causing him pain. And despite the fact that it's also getting him turned away from things like the theater, the cactus is obviously his problem. So he sprays the cactus. And something about Taylor spraying herself causes what I am assuming to be a glitch in the results of the opalite spray. And so she ends up getting transported to the lonely man's world. And that would be why she's covered in this mysterious goo. But because Taylor wasn't simply just a transformed inanimate object like the trash or the stapler, the lonely man didn't want the nopalite. He didn't want to reverse the effects because she was actually a transported whole human being, and they ended up getting along and becoming friends. And then they also start to even make other friends. So they really end up being beneficial for each other. But that wasn't the work of the opalite. That was the work of Taylor using the opalite wrong. And then they ended up finding something good to come out of the fact that she used the opalite wrong and ended up transported. This also explains why the rock and the cactus are so jaded at Taylor and the Lonely Man, because if Taylor had used the opalite spray correctly, both the rock and the cactus would have been transformed into a nice, shiny person that they could have the chance to potentially be with the lonely man or woman. But because Taylor used it wrong and ended up getting herself swapped, and then her and the lonely man got along, both the rock and the cactus got screwed and they ended up finding each other thanks to Opalite, which is fortunate, but it makes sense that they were upset by getting left behind because all of the other inanimate objects would have been transformed by Opalite. Now, I happen to find the use and importance of inanimate objects in this video extra significant because I've been talking about the similarities and the parallels between this music video and the Bejeweled music video, as well as just her life right now and the Bejeweled music video. And in the Bejeweled music video, although it starts off very themed like Cinderella with the stepsisters and her cleaning up the floor, the music video ends with her in a yellow dress keeping the castle, which has always very much reminded me of Belle. And Belle's story is all about a castle full of people who have been turned into inanimate objects. I don't think that's an accident. There are so many other things that I want to talk about with this music video, including casting decisions like the fact that Domhnall Gleeson was on a very interesting Black Mirror episode that has similar themes to this music video, and the fact that she chose to make the story that she came up with the idea for this music video on Graham Norton, which I don't personally believe to be true. And not to mention all of the Stranger Things similarities and connections, which are absolutely intentional as well. So make sure you're following along, and thank you so much for watching.